Hi friends, it's Deanna Williston from Our Blooming Catholic Life. And I know I normally do book reviews on Monday. This one's coming to you early because it's actually the subject of the next Women of Grace book study, which starts this Monday. So yeah, you'll want to have time to get the book. Now don't worry, if you don't get the book in time, you can still go ahead, sign up for the webinar. You can join us anyway. It's on Zoom, or you can watch it on replay. Any that you miss, you can watch on the replay. It's okay. The book study isn't that expensive. I'll tell you, it's like a 6-7 week book study on Zoom. You get to interact with all the other ladies, and wow, Sue Brinkman leads it. It's amazing. Let's get into this book a little bit. They have had their kickoff webinar. I love their kickoff webinars. So Father Dwight Longenecker actually came and gave us kind of an overview on the book. My copy just came in the mail. That's why I'm doing this now. I had to wait till I got it. So it's Beheading Hydra, a radical plan for Christians in an atheistic age. And if you just watched my video where I was screaming about the 3 pillars of Franciscan education, I'm fired up for this book. Okay, let me read what's on the back of the book, just in case you've never heard it. Never before has humanity existed in a culture that rejects beliefs in a transcendent power. Previous cultures, even when they rent by bitter disagreements, shared a common belief that a greater force stood above the material realm. But when one side acknowledges an ultimate source of truth while the other side denies it, debate is dead and mutual understanding is impossible. So claims Father Dwight Longenecker in his most captivating book yet, Beheading Hydra. Longenecker shows how, like the mythical serpentine beast with myriad writhing and venomous heads, atheism manifests itself today through 16 isms that cloak the actions of the Antichrist, who seethes with pure hatred of God and his truth. Because any good battle plans call for thorough knowledge of the enemy, Father Longenecker boldly exposes the philosophies behind scientism, materialism, utilitarianism, sentimentalism, sentimental humanitarianism, and more, explaining how they become the core assumptions of our culture and how they are, in turn, corrupting the politics and power structures of the world. Beheading Hydra brilliantly catalogs the alluring and seductive deceptions of each ism to help you see how they are corroding the very foundations of Western civilization and entrapping countless faithful Catholics. Best of all, the book lays out a plan of action that you and your friends can follow to gain the grace needed to behead Hydra now through the light of your lives. And this has recommendations by Robert Royal, as well as Joseph Pierce and Louis Marcos. This is published by Sophia Institute Press, which you can just get to www.sophiainstitute.com, or you can buy it at Women of Grace. It cost me $3 to have it shipped, and honestly, I think it came here in 3 days. That's not bad at all. Open it up. It's got, there's more reviews also by Carl Truman, Michael Pakaluk, Jay Richards, and Joseph Stewart. I really liked the webinar because he broke down history into 500-year epochs, he called them, and he went through them one by one, what the revolution was, what its fruits were, what the transitions were between two, how the fruits of that one impact each successive epoch. I love history, but I'm a person who is like a big picture history. I cannot remember names and dates. If you ask me about it, it's almost comical the wacky things I'll say when you ask me an actual historical tiny fact. You never know what I'm going to say. That is not how my brain works. My brain works more in big pictures. I know I am already going to be, I've promised my friends, I'm going to be writing out a chart to go with this study, like a timeline, and I can fill things in and go back and forth. So I'll probably have, literally a timeline broken up by 500 years, and I'm going to list the ism, I'm going to list the revolution. I've got it all planned out in my mind, and that, for me, is going to help me study it. Now, he may have one of those in here. We don't know yet. Pretty straightforward, and it gives you a list of other books of his in case you like this or you want to know more about him. Very interesting. The Gargoyle Code, Immortal Combat, an answer, not an argument. Our Lady, a Catholic evangelical debate. St. Benedict and St. Therese, the little rule and the little way. Okay, I may have to go back and read more of these. If you don't know about Father Dwight Longenecker, yet he grew up, I think, an evangelical in Pennsylvania and found his way to England, and he ended up being an Anglican priest over there. And he converted before we had the ordinary of the Chair of St. Peter. So he became a regular Catholic priest. And here we have the contents, have a foreword, acknowledgments, and then it's broken up into part 1. The many-headed Hydra, introduction to the problem of the many-headed Hydra. And then it goes into, interesting, the world, the flesh, the devil, and then part 2. So this is definitely set up a little differently than we had it in the webinar. So my chart is going to be handy for me here with the years on it. So I'll just have you see that. So like within the world, it has the holy prophet Puddleglum, angry young atheist, bring me the head of Jeremy Bentham, oh brave new Disney World. Okay. I just find it interesting. In part 2, I know is going to be things that we already have in our Catholic tool bag that we can pull out. It's nothing new, nothing revolutionary. It's using things we already know to combat all these isms. It ends up with a bibliography and about the author. So the foreword starts out, we live in troubled times. In 2020, America's politics and economy were sent on a roller coaster ride by pandemic, riots, and an election that was marked by extraordinary vitriol, even by American standards. But there is trouble, and there's trouble. The travails of America and the West in general go far beyond the challenges associated with the world's struggle against an invisible enemy in what many people would describe as the most depressing year of their lives. That is one of the core messages of Father Dwight Longenecker's reflections on the many-headed beast that is relentlessly corroding the foundations of Western civilization. It's very easy to get caught up in the immediate difficulties confronting us while forgetting the deeper, often centuries-old forces that are at work in the world and at war with the true, the good, and the beautiful. And so we're going to look at how culture was influenced by these different elements. How culture all along the way and cumulatively. So I think we're going to look at each of them individually and then how they build up to where we are today. Then here is a little acknowledgement. Beheading Hydra emerged from the first half of a completely different book. Thanks go to Charlie McKinley and the team at Sophia Institute Press for being flexible with this process and seeing how 2 books could come out of an original idea. So he has a little acknowledgments here. Then the idea of the many-headed Hydra comes from 1 John. So this is right here in part 1. It's pretty easy to read, although it is in italics and probably a normal size font where he could have made it bigger because there's plenty of room on the page. Let's read that little passage. Do not love the world or the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, sensual lust, enticement for the eyes, and a pretentious life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. Yet the world and its enticements are passing away, but whoever does the will of God remains forever. Children, it is the last hour, and just as you have heard that the Antichrist was coming, so now many Antichrists have appeared. Thus, we know this is the last hour. 1 John 2:15 through 19. Introduction to the problem. And he starts out here, a few years ago when we were on a family vacation at Myrtle Beach. I dared the kids to go through one of those walk-through spook houses with me. It was terrifyingly fun. We had to feel our way through the dark corridors where most any sort of horror could be lurking. So if you were intimidated by the book from the back, whatever in the back, this is totally accessible. He's a person just like us. He's written it. There are footnotes, pretty easy to read down here, so they are immediately there for you. One is an outright book, one is an article with a hyperlink added. It's very interesting because in 1 minute, yes, he's quoting an article, then the next he's quoting Yeats. And then he's telling family stories. So it's very intricately woven. If you're an intellectual, you're going to love this book. If you're a mom or a dad, you're going to love this book. If you're a literary nerd, a book nerd, you're going to love this book. I really think there's something in here for everyone, and it's very approachable. Puppy dogs and priests. I swear I saw that. That is chapter 7. Sentimentalism and romanticism. I was a minister in the Church of England in the late 1980s when the entire denomination was embroiled in a debate about women's ordination. Much was at stake. Strong arguments were put forward from both sides, and the debates became heated. Very often, the discussion was reduced to one-sided speeches, like this. My friend Sandra is a deacon. She has received the same theological training as the priest. She is a good preacher and teacher. She is a compassionate person who loves God and loves her neighbor. I know Sandra as a prayerful, mature, and humble person. She has 3 beautiful children and a loving husband. You would love to see her walking in the countryside with Derek and their pair of Labradors, Poppy and George. Is it fair to deny Sandra ordination to the priesthood when she has felt in the depth of her heart that she too is called by God to be a priest? This really reflects back to that last video I just made on the 3 pillars of Franciscan education. Yes, the personal experience and the experience of the poor, the bottom-up theology. She feels that way. So let's see here. I'm on page 83 if you have your book. The appeal in this speech is not to theology or scripture. It is not to reason, Christian church tradition, the writings of the Apostolic Fathers, canon law, or the belief of Anglicanism's older sisters, the Catholic and Orthodox churches. The appeal is pure sentimentality, is an appeal to the emotions. We're expected to admire Sandra for her wonderful qualities. Our hearts are warmed by her personal integrity, her deep faith, her status as a wife and mother, and her fondness for her 2 lovable Labradors. Then the protagonist plunged in the emotional blackmail dagger. How can you be so cruel and heartless to deny Sandra what she knows God wants her to do? Sentimentalism is the 13th head of the Hydra that needs to be cut off and cauterized. There's nothing wrong with emotion as such, but sentimentalism is the system of decision-making or taking action based only on one's emotions. Again, I'm going to bring you back to the secular Franciscan topic because this was covered, I poison ivy. This was covered in one of the very first secular Franciscan formation classes I had. If you are a brother, sun, sister, moon kind of Franciscan, if you want to frolic in fields full of daisies and you think that's what we do, if that's the St. Francis, you want the St. Francis of the bird baths, this may not be for you. That's sentimentalism. That's not walking in the footsteps of St. Francis, in the footsteps of Christ. If you want to follow Christ in the footsteps of St. Francis, there's going to be obedience, there is going to be humility, Marian humility, there is going to be the poverty and love of the Trinity. So the poverty of the Incarnation flowing out of the love of the Trinity. Those things have to be there. Otherwise, it's sentimentalism. It's not truth. Interesting. It says, remember that the heads of the Hydra are all interwoven, and so sentimentalism is often combined with utilitarianism and pragmaticism, which deadly results. I'm afraid your mother is nearing the end of her life, says the kindly doctor. I know you do not wish her to be in pain any longer. She's a lovely person. We all know where that's going. Woo! Okay, let's just flip to the back of the book and see what one of the remedies are. I'm back on page 154. The role of worship. I am just randomly picking these. Literally, this book just came in the mail. Remember, this is not just a theory. For the sacramental vision to have a full effect, it is put into action through worship. We can have forgotten what the Mass and the administration of the sacraments are all about. We've taken a utilitarian approach, turning the Mass into a family fellowship time, treating baptism as no more than a celebration of a child's birth. Confession has been turned into a form of therapy. Marriage is no more than a sentimental celebration of a couple's love, and confirmation an adolescent rite of passage. The celebration of the sacraments includes these elements, but first and foremost, they are an activation of God's grace in our lives. The worship we offer is the context by which we connect with this supernatural power. The modernist church, however, has quietly removed the aspect of the sacraments, thus emasculating them for many people. Instead of an earthquake encounter with the living God, the sacraments have become no more than an anodyne form of therapy and community celebration. In the liturgy, the sacraments and the history are put into action through worship. In the liturgy, we read and meditate on the sacred scriptures, the history of God's work in the world. Did I say we need creatively subversive action in the world to counter the poison of the Hydra? The Mass is God's creatively subversive action in the world. And when we participate in the Mass, we join our actions with His. This attitude and action on a weekly and daily basis counteract the debilitating and destructive attitude of scientism and historicism in our society. And as we live this kind of life, we offer a creatively subversive alternative, a life that is embedded in the supernatural realities of a God who is Emmanuel, God with us, the poverty of the incarnation, the love of the Trinity, and we need that Marian humility and obedience, not just the feel-good party aspects of our faith. Pancake breakfasts are nice, but they are not worshiping God. That last bit was my own. Oh my goodness, there is so much in here, friends. I think you're going to love it. If you're ready to challenge yourself and challenge your conception of the church, maybe you do have some of these isms, or maybe you saw yourself reflected in some of those things I was saying. You were like, yeah, marriage is about love. Love is love. Then maybe you need to read this book. You might not agree with what we're saying, but you'll understand where we're coming from a little bit better. So I say get this book, because one of the premises is from the back, you can't really dialogue if you don't have any common ground to begin with. You're just setting up walls and speaking and hearing your own voice back. There's no actual interaction. We have to break down the walls a little bit. How do we break down the walls? The tips are in here. So let's get out and read this book. If you want to join Women of Grace, head on over to their website. That book study is beginning. Look at the date of this video. I think the book study begins on March 14th, 2022. If you've missed it and you become a Women of Grace exclusive member, which is included, I think, when you sign up for the book study, and probably any book study in the future. Anyway, you become a Women of Grace exclusive member, a lot of these playbacks will become available to you. It may vary over time. I'm not going to guarantee anything for another organization, but a lot of times you can go back and watch previous things that we've done, and you may be able to still catch that webinar by Father Dwight Longenecker. That is Beheading Hydra. Oh, how many pages is it? It's the reason it's such a long book study is including the bibliography, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 sides of pages, and the 1-page biography. It is 221 pages, so not bad. It looks like a chunky monkey, but it's really not. And I think we're going to take like one little chapter at a time. The Gumby Men? Frank Sinatra philosophy. Okay, I know there's already a homework assignment out there. I'm going to start on this in a couple minutes. I've got some subtitling to do for the John Bradford Memorial Society. And then I'm going to jump onto this today. Oh, into the book. God bless you, friends. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.